still need to get a sense of what this is about. So we are now trying to identify the difference between the Mochin briah and Mochin the atzilus, or in general atzilus and briah. And as we said yesterday, why the focus on Mochin? It is due to the fact that Mochin is where the godly reality is recognized. This is what Mochin is. Mochin has the capacity, like we said in the motion of sight, to see what you see without getting personally involved. And yet, what you see is real to you. So this is where it becomes, there's a bridge, so to speak, between one madrega and another. A true bridge that you actually sense and draw from the higher madrega into where you are. This is why the focus is on Mochin. And this is why I say that there are different madregas in Mochin. And we're saying that the Mochin of briah, bichlolus, as a category, these are Mochin that are shaykh to midas. This is what's called a categorical identification. And the reason that it's a Mochin that are shaykh al hamidos bichlolus is that, as we said yesterday, briah is a world. And therefore, to conceptualize something and to relate to something that is totally out of world is not possible in briah. There has to be some kind of a final point that this can be recognized from a worldly, within a worldly context. This is why I say that the klolus of Mochin of briah is a shayochin el amidos. What are midos? And we said many times, the word mido means measurement. Which means a measurement applies to something of a tangible nature, identifiable presence. And again, going back to the principle that we are dealing with, we are trying to identify how the lakus comes down into the world. A lakus does not have a measure, does not lend itself to be measured, because it is not of a tangible presence. As we pointed out, simply from the Rambam, Mochin a first being. A first being means there is nothing preceding, nothing succeeding. There is not an identifiable entity element there. This is a truth beyond conceptualization. As a matter of fact, this is the truth that initiates everything. This is what gives presence to everything else. Mamtzik ol nimtzo brings forth to everything that exists. And every nimtzo that comes forth from it recognizes it at its own level. None of it recognizes it in totality. So I don't know exactly where we should start inside. We spoke about Mochin the Niko yesterday. All right, we'll start from the land that begins with the me-chu-lakim me-chu-lakim. Okay, in the middle of that line. Klolos ha-me-chu-lakim the briah, the principle, the categorical definition of me-chu-lakim the briah, hein ha-shayochin al ha-midos. They're the me-chu-lakim that have a relationship to midos. Again, even though these are Mochin, which relate and draw and strive upwards, but by definition, there's a midos element there, because they're in briah, they're in the world. This is in general, or proteus. But more specifically, yesh bozeh chilukim madrigas. There are different madrigas in this Mochin itself. As we have been identifying all along, Mochin be'etzem, Mochin ha'shech ha'midas. Sha'arei gam ba'atzilut yesh bechinas Mochin be'etzem. Seems that in atzilus too, even in atzilus, there's the bechina that's called Mochin be'etzem. Mochin on an essential level. And then there is also in atzilus, Mochin ha'shech ha'midas. Mochin that relate to midas. Even within atzilus itself, there are also these distinctions. In other words, if you go down to specifics, you can find specifics of all kinds of different levels.
To remain on this call, press 1.
Rak, except, Rak means because we have identified briah versus atzilus. So this is a very general definition. Because the distinction is making the etzem, Mochin, ha'shech ha'midas exists in atzilus itself also. So how do we apply this only to briah? So the answer is the b'chlolos in ha-mochin. B'chlolos in ha-mochin, the categorical definition of mochin. Yesh leimar, there it could be said, the briah hein ha'shayach ha'midas, that in briah the mochin of briah, these are the mochin that are shaychet to midas. Hanikra mochin di inika, which is also called mochin di inika. Mochin that provide the suckling, so to speak, the provision for midas. Shehamidas yoinkim madregasu, where the midas suckle from this madrega. We'll discuss the term suckling. Suckling has two principles in it. What is actually transmitted is a regular food, is a milk. But it is prior to the moment when the milk becomes an independent presence. The baby is not capable of taking the milk directly. It has to relate to its mother. And as far as the baby is concerned, it is the mother that feeds it, not the milk. It's called Mochin di Inika. So even though this is Mochin means that there is the essential reality, the godly reality in Mochin, but still it's Inika, which means it also has a content to the point where it can be feeding its content down to briah.
Could you elaborate that? That's hard to understand.
I don't know. We discussed it yesterday.
There has to be
What do you understand?
What I'm hearing you say is that there has to be some kind of a connection between the giving and the receiving, and it has to be higher than just the quality of feeding. It's what is passed on is not just the milk.
That's right. That's right, because then it's not Mochin anymore.
So what's passed on to the midos is not Mochin anymore.
What's passed on to the midos is what's passed on with the conscience, with recognition that actually, in essence, this is Mochin, but it's being translated at the level of midos.
Why is Mochin always plural? How could there be many Mochin?
Do you have any brains?
You
use that expression, brains, in English.
Well,
Yitzchak,
that's...
it's not going to be helpful. Because there are many madrigas in Mochin. By definition.
But still, it's the same Mochin. It's still the quality.
Yeah. Maybe we'll revisit this question and after we have some clarity what we're talking about.
Okay.
An interesting thing, really a phenomenal miracle within the creation itself. I'm sure we all know that milk in the mother first comes to be after the mother has an offspring. Isn't that phenomenal? The mother is a full-fledged individual prior to that. And yet, and what full-fledged individual means, it has its Mochin, it has its personal identity, what it is. And the mother craves for a child almost from birth on. Notice, little girls, what do they play? What do they play about? Boys play cowboys. What do girls play?
Mommy.
Mommy. In other words, the reality of it exists in the mommy way before. But that reality translates in an actual means of birth and sustenance and provision after the birth takes place. This is where it becomes, the reality of the mommy becomes midos. All the mommy is a suckler. It's still Mochin, it's still a reality of a full-fledged human being, but this human being has now been fully translated, so to speak, in terms of how it provides for the offspring.
It's becoming, it means like a new stage in life, like going from child to adult.
If I thought this would be helpful, I will go into it. What needs to be understood is that this phenomenon exists in the Mochin before it is so identified, before it is so narrowed down. If it didn't exist, then it would not occur afterwards. And yet, initially, it is on a different level. So it's called Mochin be'etzem, and then it becomes Mochin di'iniko. So Mochin of the Madrega of Mochin the briah. This is Mochin, the defining element of Mochin, the RASHAB hamidus. This is when it becomes Mochin the briah. Prior to that, it is Mochin be'etzem. All right. Let's continue, if we need be, to revert back to here. We have to pass through this narrow path over here. In briah, as we said, briah is a world, and therefore everything in the world has to have something to do with the offspring of midas. Sha'amidas hinkim madrigazu. Okay, this is 4 lines from the bottom. In the middle of the line, Veheim bechinas moichin de katnus. This is what's referred to as moichin de katnus.
I'm sorry, where are we holding that?
4 lines from the bottom towards the end of the line.
Gotcha.
Moichin de katnus. Moichin on a small scale. Why is it called on a small scale? Because these moichin depend on the midas for self-identity. That's why it's moichin the katnus, in which it does not stand on its own. It needs to have a point of ramification. What is this all about?
Who does these midas do?
Moichin of the Shachas to 4 lines. Midas yoinkin me'adrigas. The midas suckle. It's still moichin. It's still that which recognizes and it's part of a higher element, of a higher reality. But it also reveals its principal union is that it can provide for midas further down. This union that it can provide for midas is an inherent union in these moichin. It is not something that is identified later on.
Right, and that's being called katnas.
That's called making the katnas.
You might think it's the true greatness to relate to something lower. The real master can speak to anybody.
That's why it's still called moichin. If it were completely translated on midas, it would not be called moichin. This thing that you said, the real master can speak to everybody. Is actually alluding to a broader principle which we discussed way back when. Even in koiches ha'adam, let's take from a human being. Human being has seichel and midas, and then machshava dibur ma'aseh. So you would say, seichel, this is the real person. This is what the human being stands for. Why does he wake up in the morning? Why does daylight get him out of bed? Because of his seichel. But Notice this. Yes, indeed, daylight wakes us. The seichel relates to daylight. He says, oh, there's something real over here. And what is the result of this? He gets out of bed. Why not stay in bed and contemplate daylight? Because in the seichel itself, it is recognized that when do you have this reality? It is when you bring it down to Maisa. Better still, it is not real unless it has the capacity to come down to Maisa. If it is contemplation that leaves you in bed, you're not contemplating of something real. Then you're in imagination. If it is real, then yes, indeed, it's a Mochin, it's a seichel contemplation, but this encompasses the entire spectrum of existence, all the way down to mice. This is why Mochin have the union Mochin the unique. It goes on into Midas. It goes on into even further down. Because, like what you said, because that is the indicator that these Mochin are for real.
It's validating that it's for real, but it's the level of katnus that relates to that level of reality.
That's
yeah?
right. That's right.
As if to say it's limiting itself to relate to something lower, something more reduced than it.
It is finding within its highest levels that which also includes the lowest.
Right, so why would we call that katnus?
Because it is not involved in Mochin, in what it conceptualizes per se.
It's not looking up, it's looking
That's right.
to... But it does have to reference its higher reaches.
That's right. The whole point is to reference the higher reaches and to bring it down and show how that translates on the lower level.
Yeah.
Like you said in Nico, milk, you can take the milk and feed the baby. Why does it have to suckle? Because this suckle, this relationship to the mother, is of a primary importance to the baby. This is what gives the baby a sense of reality. Let's continue. Just a few more words. V'zehu, that too, explains the point. Sheba'olam habriya, that in this world it's called briah, hein dichilu urchimu sichliyim. Chilul Chima means Yira and Ahava. In Yira and Ahava, which is Midas, this is that which is experienced at the world level. This is where the Mochin have come down into Midas and becomes imbued, so to speak, and contained in Midas. And it's called Chilul Sichliyim. Sichliyim means intelligent or Ava Vihira that are supported by Seichel. There's a very quick note about this, and we'll have to leave it for next time. One phenomenal thing in the human being, because the human being is in totality. In other words, the overall definition of a human being is that he is a sichli. He's intelligent. A human being cannot hardly can do anything that cannot be identified and explained. What are you doing? Even though he can go down very low, but then he doesn't belong there. In order for him to identify with what he's doing, there has to be some seichel element in it, some concept. What are you doing? A human being cannot stoop down and eat directly from the plate. He just cannot, even though it's food. There has to be a transfer from the food to his mouth, and he knows what he's doing.
Can I ask something?
Just a minute, just a minute. So this sichli element, is what identifies the human element in every action. So even though the action may be a real action, yet it is imbued, so to speak, and it is a human being. When a carpenter brings in a nail, his hand is fully aware, so to speak, and alive with bringing in this nail. He's never a robot bringing in a nail, never. He's involved in what he is doing. This is the sichli element. So even though it comes out to Abba B'yira and so forth, there is a seichel element in it that gives it a sense of reality. I'll have a minute. Notice, the Gemara says that Mitzrayim have enslaved the Eden beforech. What does beforech mean? Beforech means
Harshness.
No, beforech means a means by which the person, the human being, is
Taken apart.
Is taken apart.
Mefarek.
Broken up. And what is an example of that? The example of that is he would tell him to dig a ditch, presumably to dig the ditch in order to put a tree in it,
And then fill it.
And then we will fill it back in. So what's so terrible about that? The work is identical. The sikhli element is being taken away. The action is exactly the same. And the sikhli element is taken away, you're destroying the human being. His turn. Yes, Shlomo.
Was said before that a human being can always be explained what he's doing. There's a sikhli element to whatever he does. Isn't a human being can do something just midas without cycle?
No. The seichel has to be someplace underneath. Deep down in the subconscious, he explains, he justified what he's doing. Notice an interesting thing. A dog gets all excited. He walks in the street and the dog sees another dog and starts jumping on him. All the master has to do is to give it a little tap on his head, and he comes down and he goes away. Can you do this same thing to a human being? Tap him on his head and he'll calm down. You'll forget. He won't be interested in it. No such thing. He goes with him, he goes at him, and he continues to reflect on it, and it's a whole nisayon, it's a whole labor, internal labor, to outgrow any bit of an interest that he was exposed to.